Look, we are living in 2026. You are probably sitting there with some hyper-realistic 150 gigabyte behemoth of a game, watching every single pore on your character's face breathe an 8K resolution. It is impressive, sure. The tech these days is absolutely wild, and it is easy to get lost in the sheer scale of modern open-world titles, where you can walk for hours without seeing the same rock twice. But then you have me, sitting here in my chair, firing up a game that looks like it was plucked straight out of a classic era. I am talking about Celeste. If you think a 2D pixel art platformer can't stand up to the giants of today, you are dead wrong. This isn't just a game, it is a masterclass in design that makes most of these massive, high-budget hollow shells look like total jokes. And trust me, by the time I'm done talking, you're going to realize why this game is still more relevant right now than half the stuff being hyped up in the storefronts. You have to understand, we're talking about a game that focuses on a girl named Madeline trying to climb a mountain. On paper, it sounds like the most boring premise in history. You have three basic moves: jump, climb, and a single air dash. That's it. No guns, no swords, no complicated skill trees to manage, and no convoluted crafting systems where you spend 3 hours gathering wood to build a chair. It's just you, the controller, and a massive, unforgiving mountain. But the second you start playing, you realize the genius of the movement. The way the character responds to your input is instant. It's tighter than anything else out there. When you die, and believe me, you're going to die thousands of times, it's never because the game cheated you. It's never because of a buggy hitbox or a frame rate dip. It's always because you made a mistake. You pressed the button a millisecond too late, or you dashed in the wrong direction, or you panicked. And because of that, you don't get angry at the game, you get angry at yourself. That is the hallmark of a perfect game. Let's talk about that death loop. In most modern titles, if you screw up a difficult section, you're forced to sit through a loading screen, watch a respawn animation, and trek all the way back to where you were. It kills the flow, it kills the hype. In Celeste, death is basically a non-event. You hit the spikes, the screen fades for a fraction of a second, and you're back at the start of the room. This instant respawn loop does something psychological to your brain. It removes the fear of failure. It turns the entire game into a rapid-fire puzzle where you're constantly experimenting. You try a path, you die, you adjust, you try again. It keeps you in a state of flow that is so addictive you'll lose entire nights of sleep without even realizing it. I've been playing games for decades, and rarely have I seen a developer understand the value of a player's time like this. Now, look, the story isn't some epic space opera or a gritty war drama. It is deeply personal. Madeline is dealing with anxiety and depression, and the mountain is a massive metaphor for her internal struggle. You meet Madeline, a manifestation of her self-doubt, and the way the game weaves the narrative into the platforming is brilliant. You aren't just watching a cutscene about her feeling anxious, you are playing through it. The music, the tension, the visual cues, it all aligns to tell you exactly how she feels. There are no long, boring dialogues. It is just raw, honest storytelling through gameplay. By the time you reach the summit, you actually feel like you've accomplished something, not just in the game, but internally. That is something a lot of these cinematic, movie-like games fail to do because they prioritize the cutscene over the player's agency. But let's get into the nitty-gritty of the world design, because this is where the game actually shines. Every chapter introduces a brand new mechanic. One chapter is about wind mechanics, the next is about floating through space, then there's the hotel segment with that ghost concierge, Mr. Oshiro, who is constantly haunting your progress. The game never recycles its ideas to pad out the length. It keeps hitting you with something fresh, something challenging, and something that forces you to rethink your approach. And then there are the strawberries. You don't need to collect them, they're purely optional, but they're placed in these diabolical, punishing locations that just scream, "I bet you can't get this." It's a psychological trap. You know you don't need them, but you can't help yourself. You see that red berry on a platform surrounded by spikes, and suddenly you're obsessing over it for 45 minutes. That is the hook. I have to address the difficulty because I know some of you are looking at this and thinking it looks too hard. The B-sides and C-sides are brutal. They are legitimately some of the hardest platforming challenges ever put into a commercial game. If you think you're a hardcore gamer, these levels will humble you real fast. But here's the genius part. The developers were smart enough to include an assist mode. You can tweak the speed, you can give yourself infinite stamina, you can even make yourself invincible. A lot of purists might hate that, but honestly, it is brilliant. It makes the game accessible to everyone without compromising the vision for the people who want to rip their hair out. You're playing the same game as everyone else, just at your own pace. Think about how games have aged in 2026. How many games from 2018 are you still genuinely excited to boot up? Most of them are bogged down by outdated servers, broken UI, or gameplay that feels clunky by today's standards. Celeste doesn't have that problem. The pixel art is timeless. It uses color and lighting in such a sophisticated way that it doesn't matter how high the resolution gets, it will always look beautiful. The sound design is just as vital. Lena Raine's soundtrack is iconic. It blends chiptune with piano and synth in a way that perfectly captures the vibe of being lost, being afraid, and eventually finding your strength. You could listen to that OST on its own, but inside the game, it is the heartbeat of the experience. And what about the post-game? Let's not forget the Farewell DLC. If you thought the base game was tough, Farewell is a whole different beast. It is essentially an expansion that pushes the mechanics to their absolute limit. It is a long, grueling, emotionally heavy journey that wraps up the story in a way that feels complete. Many developers would have just churned out a sequel, but this team just poured everything they had into a cohesive package. It makes the game feel like a complete, finished work of art. If I'm being critical, which I always am, is there a downside? Maybe the difficulty spikes might turn off the casual player who just wants a relaxing experience. But even then, the game gives you the tools to bypass that. Is it too repetitive? Not at all, because the environments change so drastically. It really is a rare title where I'm struggling to find a legitimate flaw. Even the technical performance is flawless. I have played this on every piece of hardware I own and it never stutters, never lags, and never crashes. It is a level of polish that we are starving for in this era of day one patches and broken launches. So, here's the verdict. If you haven't played Celeste, you are doing yourself a massive disservice. It is a game that respects your intelligence, respects your time, and gives you an experience that will stay with you long after the credits roll. I'm giving it a solid 5 out of 5, no hesitation. It's not just a 2D platformer, it is a monument to what indie developers can do when they really care about their craft. It puts these massive, soul-sucking AAA projects to shame by simply being better designed, more honest, and more fun. In 2026, when every game is trying to be a service, a platform, or an ecosystem, Celeste stands tall as just being a really, really good video game. So, look, that's my take. I'm curious though, have you actually taken the time to beat it? Did you manage to grab those strawberries or did you give up and turn on the assist mode? I won't judge you, well, maybe a little bit. Drop a comment below and tell me which chapter made you want to throw your controller across the room. If you enjoyed this dive into a classic, hit that like button to let the algorithm know we're still talking about real games, and subscribe if you want to see more of this straight talk. Share this with that one friend who thinks graphics are the only thing that matters, and let's see if we can get them to finally experience greatness. Catch you in the next one.